Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Totally realize it is not a Monday. And my background looks a little bit different, which is partially why I am joining you live on Tuesday rather than our typical Monday. I have been in transit. Kids now live in a place where they get out of school at the end of May, which, as a human who has never lived this myself and has never lived it in a school system that I have taught in or that my kids have been in, I'm having a little trouble wrapping my head around it. Can you hear me like tripping up on my words? Because I have obviously worked for the last many, many years with teachers whose students get out in May, but living this reality is really different. And so we have moved. We have temporarily moved. Sorry, we're not undergoing a major move again like we did last summer as a family, but we will be sort of in different places, seeing family and friends and grounding ourselves on the Eastern Seaboard this summer, which I'm really excited about, but also excited to be joining you. So thank you for your patience and your willingness to go along with me being here on a Tuesday rather than a Monday. And I hope you are doing well. And those of you on summer vacation, great, enjoy. And those of you who've got a few more weeks, you can do it. You can totally do it. It is coming and it is so exciting. And then you will have more summer vacation when the rest of us have to go back to school. That's right. My kids have to go back at the very, very beginning of August. Again, also having trouble wrapping my head around that one. But that is not why I am joining live. This is not what I am trying to share out about data pieces and things like that. That's just a little reality of where I am, right? Hashtag life in session. What I did think could be fun to talk about is a question that came through to us, I guess initially kind of a couple weeks ago, and then it popped up again last week on one of the webinars that we were running as we were launching our new course, Confusion to Clarity, 3 Steps to Master Graphing. Yep, that's right. I'm in Vermont with all sorts of bugs and no-see-ums coming through. And this is a question of, do we call it data visualization? Do we call it data representation? Do we call it graph types? Like, what do we call it? And what are these things, and are they interchangeable? And so, great question. And I figured it would be a great data bite for us to kind of chat about and think about this week. So, going back to the absolute basics of, well, what is visualization? What is that word actually referring to? And we can think about visualization as the process of making visual whatever is communicating specific knowledge. Okay, like really broad term, right? We're just trying to sort of norm set in like generally what we mean. Data visualization is any visual representation of data or practicing visualizing data. So we can see how data visualization creates this really broad umbrella of all of the visual ways that we represent and look at and visualize our data. So if we are being like in the weeds, nitty gritty, like really picky, attention to detail, we should be using data visualization to refer to all of the ways that we are visualizing our data. Now, let me share what I think works best in K-12 based on the work that we're doing in different schools and districts across the country and feedback from educators that we are working with across this K-12 spectrum. So when we are working with teachers and their students in the elementary space, we often use data representation, or actually we flip the sentence around to be like, the data we are representing here, or we use graph type in elementary. So those are the two terms that we often use, that we have settled in on based on the work that we're doing. And as I said, like feedback we're getting from our elementary educators as we're working through it. Because in our elementary years, we really want kids to build out this knowledge and the understanding that our visuals of our data, our visual representations. I'm trying not to use the word representations. You can see how I'm getting tripped up on it. But what we are actually looking at visually represents is a proxy for a visual identification of what our data actually are, and building that connection of we have our data, and then we visualize it as a way to represent what our data are is a key grounding foundational thing that our elementary students are working on and grasping. And if we can build out that foundation, whew, we can go so much farther in middle school and high school. Now, by middle school, or by high school, I should say, let me jump to our other grade band. So in elementary, we anchor into data representation, or like saying that in more elementary speak of the data we are representing, or we are representing these data here by this, or graph types. So let's jump up to the upper grade band of high school. And then we spend a lot of time really leaning into the language of data visualization or data representation. And in middle school, we use all three: data visualization, data representation, or graph types. Why does this shift by the time, like, why do we want to be shifting into really leaning into data visualization by high school? Well, there are a lot of ways that we visualize data that are not a graphs. We have charts, we have plots, we have maps, we have um, icon arrays. We have different ways to visualize it that are not all graphs. If you go back and look at the data bite from a while ago where I talk about the difference between a chart and a plot and a graph, then you can see sort of why they are actually different. We sometimes use them interchangeably in the K to 12 space. We here at Dataspire are firm believers that K to 12 students do not need to know what is a chart versus a plot versus a graph. Let's get them understanding that we are visualizing our data, and that those data, that visual, is a representation of the data and things like that. And that is what we want all of our students to understand. And then how to ask questions, how to analyze it, how to interpret it, all of those pieces. But the jargon, the vocabulary of a chart, a plot versus a map, we don't think is as important, needs to be as foregrounded for broader data literacy, but it is more accurate. We have charts, plots, maps, arrays, all of these different ways, as well as graph types, all these different ways that we visualize data. So we want our students by high school using that more accurate term, that more umbrella term of what are we looking at? How are the visuals? All of those things. Okay, so hopefully that helped provide at least a bit of context of how we approach this here at Dataspire with the educators, the schools, the districts that we're working with in terms of, do we call it a data visualization, a representation, or a graph type? If you are interested in sort of diving into a little bit more of the weeds of like, how do we think about the sequence? Or how do we sort of narrow in on what is my grade level and how do I help my students build the data literacy skills for that grade level? Then I really encourage you to come join us this coming July at our data literacy bootcamp. We dive into a range of topics and tailor it for the age of our specific learners. I'll put the link below. If you're interested, come join us July 29th through 31st. It's online, no need to travel. And don't worry, we are not like Zoom zombies by the end. We change it up, we adjust it up, but we do have kind of 3 days to dive in and think about what are basic data literacy skills and how do we really enhance and support, empower our students with those data skills. With that, I hope you have a wonderful rest of the week, wherever you are in space, whatever is going on in life, and I'll talk to you all next week. Thanks, everyone.